So we have a housing crisis which is largely forgotten and largely ignored. Certainly not getting the attention that it needs. The problem of homelessness, there are, in the Dublin region, according to the official figures, 6 new people becoming homeless every day. And 2 people, homeless people, moving out of homelessness every day. But that gives us a net 4 people every day, a net increase in homelessness of 4 people every day. We would need to open a new hospital in the Dublin region every week with 28 beds, just to keep up with the crisis. Who are becoming homeless? I think there is a change in the nature of homelessness as well. The vast majority now of people who are becoming homeless do not have a drug problem, do not have a drink problem, do not have any problem, except they don't have the money to acquire their own accommodation. Many of those who are becoming homeless today are losing their private rented accommodation because rents are going up. Rents are going up because there is a shortfall of rented accommodation in the Dublin area. In November 2011, there were 6,700 rental units of accommodation available. 2 years later, in November 2013, there were 1,500 units of accommodation available. And there were 2,500 people chasing those 1,500 units of accommodation. So landlords are putting up the rents. The rents are going up. They've gone up 18% in the past 3 years, when rent allowance has gone down by 38% in the last 3 years. So the rents are going up, and people and families are simply unable to afford to pay the increased rent. There was one family highlighted in the media about a month ago. They were in a private rented accommodation, had been there for quite some time, paying €900 a month, and the landlord increased the rent to €1,300. They couldn't afford to pay, the rent allowance wouldn't cover it, and they were evicted. They were placed in a bedroom in an hotel. Well, it's better than anywhere else. But a bedroom in a hotel, a family with a couple of kids, they have no cooking facilities. The hotel may be, I don't know if it was in this case, but may very well be a long way away from the kids' school, and so the family may be under huge financial pressure trying to get the children to and from school every day, and they've no idea how long they're going to be there. So many of the people who are becoming homeless today are being evicted from private rental accommodation because they can no longer afford to pay the rent. Others are losing their accommodation because there's a breakdown in relationships. If you're sharing accommodation with anyone, whether it's your parents or your partner, or you're sharing with friends, and your relationship with them breaks down for whatever reason, then you leave. And if you don't have the money saved up to go out and get another apartment, you're homeless. So, majority of people who are becoming homeless today are ordinary, working class, and even middle class people who are unable simply to afford their own accommodation. They don't have any problems, more than you or I, except they don't have the money to go out and get their own accommodation. So the problem of homelessness is increasing, and it's increasing rapidly, and it's going to increase even further. Some banking experts estimate that over the next few years, between 15,000 and 25,000 home repossessions are going to take place. Now, each of those repossessions, a family will lose their home. Where are they going to look for accommodation? In the private rented sector. And the private rented sector already can't cope. So we have a crisis, and the crisis is getting worse and worse and worse, and nobody seems able to do anything about it. What are the exits out of homelessness? There are 2 traditional exits. Well, 3 traditional exits out of homelessness. First and biggest is into the private rented sector. As I say, the rents are going up, and the rent allowance is static, has come down twice in the past 2 years. And it is now almost impossible to get any sort of accommodation on the rent allowance, accept a dingy accommodation which is unfit for human habitation. That's if you're lucky. Most landlords will not accept anybody on a rental allowance anymore. As I say, there's 2,500 people chasing 1,500 rental accommodation units, so landlords can pick and choose with that. And there are enough people today who are working cash in hand, looking for private rental accommodation, and of course landlords will choose them before social welfare person any day of the week. So, according to DAF.ie, about 1% of landlords today are accepting rental allowance. And it is totally frustrating for homeless people. They go onto our computer in our drop-in centre to look, and they go down through all these flats, no rental allowance accepted, no rental allowance accepted. And then they come to one that says rental allowance accepted, and they ring up and they find it's down. But so, landlords, it's very difficult. Even if you had the rental allowance agreed and you had the deposit in your property, it's very difficult to get landlords now to accept. So the exit into private rental accommodation is almost squeezed off for homeless people. Second exit into out of homelessness into social housing. Now, the social housing is the biggest scandal of the Celtic Tiger years. Prior to the Celtic Tiger, we were building or acquiring between 6,000 and 8,000 social housing units every year. During the Celtic Tiger years, that dropped to about 1,700 net social housing units every year. The government simply dissociated itself from social housing, and they have now almost entirely ceased building or acquiring by social housing. They have announced with great fanfare that over the next 2 years they are providing €65 million to build 454 social housing units, which, given the social housing waiting list of 90,000, will reduce the social housing waiting list over the next 2 years by a massive 0.5%. That's if nobody joins the social housing waiting in that period. So there is no social housing. Very little social housing for homeless people to move into. And I would have to say that of all the local authorities, Dublin City Council is the best at offering social housing to homeless people. But by far the best. But it's so short. Sorry? It's in social housing is in such short supply. Don't hear from one of the other councils.
No,
protest.
I'm going to go now because I listen to this all the fucking time. Right? Might as well be a TD fucking talking. Right? I'm homeless at the moment. 90% of the people here is not homeless.
Sorry,
right?
you
don't know what homeless people go through. You don't talk to me. You don't put me down.
There will be time for you to speak. Peter's going to speak.
I'm sick and listen to the shite of the likes of him and everyone else.
Sorry. There will be people. There's a time for you to speak afterwards. If you can just give a man a chance to say his words. Okay, everyone.
As usual.
So there is no social housing of any quantity for homeless people to move into. So that exit out of homelessness is closed off. The third exit out of homelessness is into one of the voluntary or housing sectors. And they can provide a small number of housing units, but they cannot in any way meet the need for housing housing of homeless people that exists today. We have about 100 apartments that we can provide long-term housing to homeless people, but we need at the moment about 1,200 apartments in the Dublin region in order to almost eliminate homelessness. Where are we going to get 1,200 apartments? The only way we can do that in the short term is for local authorities to go out and purchase them. We can't wait for local authorities to build them. And anyway, even if they do build them, they're going to build them in blocks and they're going to become a ghetto. So I think the only way forward, and this is the time to purchase because the cost of housing is at at its lowest, it's on the way up. So this is the time to purchase before the cost of housing goes up again. We need to purchase about 1,200 units of accommodation in order to meet the demand for accommodation at home. How much will 1,200 units of accommodation cost? It will cost us about 120 million euros at today's prices. 120 million. They're removing the traffic lights at Newlands Cross so that you can drive from Belfast to Cork without stopping. And removing the traffic lights is costing 100 million euros. So the money's there, but it's being spent somewhere. We do have a crisis. That crisis is growing all the time, and unfortunately, it's not being addressed by those in authority.
Sorry.
100 million. And much of the Lloyd employees get paid?
36 million.
Thank you.
36 million.
Thank you.
Okay, and just to say...
Sorry, 48 million, not 46 million. 48 fucking million.
Sorry, can I ask a wee thing? Look, people just have a little bit of patience. We've asked Peter very kindly from across Dublin.
I'm here for
I think it's worth listening to.
He's a gentleman.
And I think we can
He's
go
a
on
gentleman.
which is sorry.
How many people here at home? How many people here at home?
Can you sit down, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 7, you mean.
I'm not asking
So you don't know what I'm going home. You don't know. You won't sit down. And you don't ever tell me to sit down. You sit fucking down. Don't you ever tell me to sit down.
Look, I'll put it to the meeting. People want
You put to me, there's 6 million people here homeless. The rest live in a home. We live nowhere.
Do people want to hear Richard speak and then we hear people
We hear you again.
Yes,
That's all we hear.
sorry, wait. If you don't want, look, the meeting, sorry, the meeting.
Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute.
Hold on,
Hold on a minute.
sorry.
Come here to my tell you, right? I'm a park order, right? Hold on. I'm a park order, right? To take my kid every weekend. And I can't because I'm in a hospital. So I'm breaking a park order. So you tell me that. Right? How do I stop that? You don't tell me what to do. Right? You never tell me what. I'm breaking a park order because of you. You tell me how I'm breaking a park order because of you. I'm breaking a park order. Because I'm homeless. That's why you're telling me.
Sorry, I think you should sit down. No, you should be focused. I'm very sorry for the host, but I think you should sit down and watch our business.
But I think you should do that.
Look, people, they sit down.
I'm travelling from Wexford, from the heart of Wexford, fucking just to look at my fucking kids. And you tell my wife, shut up. You're the one have a fucking problem. You shut up.
Look, the situation is rotten for loads of people in loads of different ways, and I know people are arguing that thing. But if we just, if people want, we can listen to Richard for 10 minutes, and then open it up to the floor, and everyone will have their turn. Is that what people want? Yeah. Okay, so that's what the meeting wants. If people don't want that, then they can go off. But honestly, if anybody wants that, that's what we're going to do here, because that's what the meeting wants. So, Richard, next few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to say, I understand people are right to be angry, and I'm sure you're right to be angry about your situation, but the reason we call the meeting is because we want to give support to those who are angry about housing and appointment. If we didn't care, we wouldn't call this meeting.
And you wouldn't be on our side,
So,
right?
if you don't want other people to help you in your fight,
We're going to get nowhere.
you're not going to get anywhere. So the reason we're here is because in my office, every week, we are open with people who are desperately looking for housing, and I'm angry about it, just as they are angry and desperate, and we want to do something. So the point of this meeting is to get people together. If you want to fight it on your own, that's up to you. But what we're saying is we need to fight together. Okay? That's what we're saying. And and we want to hear everybody's opinion on that, but we just want to set out, because to my mind it is a good thing that people who are not directly affected at the moment by this issue would come along and support people who are, because they could be in that situation next week or next month.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're saying.
Because 3 years ago, no one gave a fuck about homelessness.
Can you give
Hold on a minute, let me speak. 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, no one gave a fuck about homelessness, but now it's hitting the middle class people, and that's why it's hitting homeless.
Well, can you give them a chance to speak, and then you'll have a chance,
Well,
okay?
can I just point out to you, right, that Lindsay's, who spoke back, sister, how many years ago was that, Lindsay?
15.
No, it's about 13 years ago.
13 years, right?
8 years ago.
13 years ago, Lindsay's sister Antoinette was on us, and we spent 6 weeks camped outside Dunleary County Council trying to get her a house. So it's true that a lot of people didn't care. But it is not true that the people in this room or who organised this meeting didn't care. It's not true.
Can I ask a simple question?
Sorry, can I just finish and then we'll have a chance. So it's not fair to tar us all the same way. So I just asked Lindsay to be fair. Right? The first meeting ever of People Before Profit, Peter McVerry spoke at. Peter mightn't even remember this. It was the very first meeting of People Before Profit ever in the no, it wasn't the Gresham. It was in what used to be called Portview Hotel, or Yelville, it used to be called. Yeah, it was about 20 people at that meeting, Peter. And we were talking about the housing crisis in Dunleary at that time. And geez, I thought it was bad then, and it just got worse and worse. And we have been fighting all of those years, saying we need to build council houses, right? And that this business of trying to solve the problem by forcing people to private rented accommodation that they can't afford would not solve the problem. And now the chickens are coming home to roost, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. Over that time, just as it happens, we have organised, I'd say, about a dozen attempts to get a housing campaign going. But we have found it difficult to get a housing campaign, not because we have not tried, but for very understandable reasons. The individuals who are in the crisis situation just want to get themselves housed. And the bigger picture of solving the root cause problem just seems too far away and too difficult to solve. And I understand that. Because if you're housed, I was homeless for 6 months, couch surfing, and it was the worst time of my life. Worst time of my life. And that's why I really do understand how awful it is. And for the people who are can't even get into Bentley House down in Dunleary because it's packed. So we genuinely sympathise. The purpose of this meeting is to try and get something done about it. But it is important, if we're going to get something done about it, we do need to understand the reasons why it is happening. Because if you don't know why the government is doing nothing about this, you won't be able to change their policy. And there is a reason, in my opinion. And that reason is, and it's the same, and this is why this is an issue, in my opinion, for people who are not affected by the housing crisis, that they should be aware of. The whole economic crash in the world, not just in Ireland, in the world, in America, in Europe, and in Ireland, was caused by one thing: housing. Housing. In America, the housing became a matter for speculation by the banks. And they did the same in Europe. All the countries that were affected by the crisis in Europe, Portugal, Spain, Ireland, Greece, all of them turned housing into a property casino to try and make money for a small group of developers, and the same happened here. So when Peter points out that they don't build council housing anymore, the reason they don't build council housing is because successive governments said, we're going to hand over responsibility for housing to property developers, to private property developers and landlords, to make money out of other people's misery. And that is what they have been doing. And unless we address that problem, not only will the housing crisis and the homelessness get worse for those who are affected by it, but I also think it means we are heading towards another economic crash sooner rather than later. I mean, it is incredible that at the moment we are in a situation where there's 100,000 people on the housing list now for up to 16 or 17 years. That's bad enough. But what is absolutely unbelievable, if you were someone from Mars and came down, you would think these people are crazy or stupid or both, is how could there be 100,000 people homeless and there's 340,000 empty houses in this country? 340,000, I repeat. 3 times more than we need to house all the people that are homeless. That's according to the census. Now, how can that be? And the answer is because those houses are owned privately. And most of them are now owned by, guess who? Our friends, the banks. The banks, who wrecked the entire country. They now own all the houses. They finance the property developers to gamble in the area of housing. Now most of those developers are out of business and they are taking over the housing. And because property values are now going up, they are going to move to evict people on an even faster rate. Which is why we can have somebody on social welfare when you can get someone who will pay a higher rent. So that's what they are doing. And Frank back there, who's in this situation, Frank was pointed out to me that people who are tenants, currently who are tenants, not even all affected by the rent allowance thing, even if they've paid their rent and all that kind of stuff, receivers are now taking over their landlords. Their landlords are going out of business, and whole estates are being told, you're out. Whole estates. So in Wicklow last week, we were contacted by 10 people where the whole estate was said, sorry, your landlord's going out of business, doesn't matter that you paid your rent, you're all out. One of the houses was a family where they have a 7-year-old girl who's severely, severe special needs, heart problem, other organ, very serious health problems, right? And they're just told, you're out, you're out. And this, I was in, the last night I went to Donegal, I thought this was just a Dublin problem, and I was in the Inishowen Peninsula, all these little small farmers at the meeting, and they told me the same was happening up there with small farmers. Because big landowners own the land, and they're big landowners, a lot of them have gone out of business because they bought up the land with money from the banks. They've gone out of business and the receivers are moving in on the land and they're kicking the small tenant farmers out, right? So this is what's happening all over the country and it's going to accelerate. Today, with great fanfare, the government announced that several billion worth of assets belonging to Anglo-Irish Bank have been handed over to 2 venture capitalist firms in America, billions worth of property. Now what do they want that property for? All of those are distressed mortgages that were with Anglo-Irish Bank. People who probably lost their jobs, can't pay their mortgage, the Anglo-Irish Bank lost their jobs through no fault of their own, and these American companies are going to come in. What are they going to do with these people who can't pay their mortgages? In a situation where property values are going to go through the roof. They're going to kick them out, and they will then be presenting to homeless service. Right? So this is a desperate crisis that is affecting the whole of Irish society and could pave the way for another bubble, another property bubble. It's starting to happen with the collapse that inevitably follows. So really on that basis I want to argue this is an issue for everybody. It's obviously an issue for the people directly affected, but I want to argue it is an issue for the whole of Irish society that we have to solve. You cannot leave something as important as housing to people who are only interested in making money. Housing is a right. The right to have a roof over your head is the most basic thing. It should be like fresh air and water. But even water, of course, isn't a right anymore. Because these people want to take their offers and charge. So, what we're saying is, we need a campaign to fight to establish the principle and force the government to accept the principle that housing is a right. And that every citizen, because they are a citizen, because they are a human being, have the right to a roof over their head. And